Hello, everybody, and welcome to Trend Micro's Managing Family Life Online webinar series. My name is Lynette Owens. I'm the founder and global director of Trend Micro's Internet Safety for Kids and Families program, and we have been hosting this series since the end of April in response to the lockdowns and the staying at home directives that were happening for families all across the United States and across the world. This is actually the last of our webinars for this series, although we are only taking a break and we will begin again this August. I do hope you'll continue to join us for those. And I will also say that for those of you who've been attending week after week or even listening to our recordings as we've posted them of past events, I would like to say thank you very much for doing that and for being with us. We think this has been a great format to stay connected to our communities. And finally, in preparation for what's about to come, we do want to make you aware of two things, which I will repeat again towards the end of the session, and that is, in addition to continuing the series for parents, we will also invite you to consider inviting Trend Micro to host a private event for your community this coming fall, starting in September. If this is of interest to you and the parents in your community, please contact us at internetsafety.trendmicro.com/contact us, and we'd be happy to work with you and host a private event for your community. With that, I want to turn our attention to today's topic. Today's topic it's an interesting one. It's a complex one. It is something we get asked about all of the time, and the word social, or the phrase social media alone, conjures up many different thoughts and feelings, especially when it comes to kids, but certainly even for adults. But we want to focus today on the role that social media has been playing in our kids' lives, especially over these last few months. And I'd like to welcome our guest, Christine Guthrie. Christine is the founder and executive director of Spark Kindness. It's a fantastic name, so I'm hoping she can tell us in a little bit about how that name came about. Thank you so much, Christine, for joining us today. And yeah, welcome.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Lynette.
So a couple of things before we get started. For those of you who are not familiar with Trend Micro's program, we do cover a wide range of issues, and as you might have seen from our previous webinars, but also as you'll see in the forthcoming webinars, we cover a wide range of topics about what it means to be online, how to raise your kids online, and while you're there, how to help them be safe, be kind, and be savvy about it. So again, we're going to continue to cover more issues. If there are topics you'd be interested in the future, please also let us know in the feedback. I encourage you at the close of this session to fill out our feedback survey. It takes very, very little time, 2-3 minutes. And if you enter your email address, you may also win. You may also have a chance to win a copy of Trend Micro Maximum Security that will secure up to 5 devices in your home. So with that, I wanted to start with a poll. And on your screen, you'll be able to actually engage in the polls. So this is a question about social media and you. How has social media impacted you over the last few months? It's been a great way to stay connected. It's making you more upset or worried, or you never or rarely use it. So go ahead and pick your answer, and we'll just give it a couple more minutes. And Christine, I know that you're not given a chance to actually answer this. How would you actually answer this question?
I guess maybe all of the above. I think there is a little bit of all of those answers. It has definitely been, I think, a tremendous way of staying connected. I think that social media in the past few months has really been, I think, supercharged in all of our lives. I think we've all utilized it. I think, the community that I serve, I'm seeing people of all ages utilizing it even more, even seniors. And I think because of that, we see its upsides and we see its not upsides. So I'd say, except I never or rarely use it as not I should say the other.
Okay. I should have put a D, which would have been all of the above, or A and B or something like that. But so let's see what people overwhelmingly believe it's been a great way to stay connected and see what's happening in the world. Of course, another good percentage of us are worried about and upset. Also understandable. I do not think these are mutually exclusive, as you say, Christine. And so those are the results for the group to see. So I think, on that note, let's ask you about your kids. Could be different depending on the ages of your kids, but how has it impacted your kids over the last few months? And let me just go ahead and launch the next poll. But I think that, as you say, Christine, use has gone up. All of the data shows that everything is up. Social media, video chat apps, online gaming, internet time in general has been way up as well over the last few months. Very, very stunning. But of course, when you have, almost 2 billion kids out of school at one point in time in the world, it's also not a shocker. So how about your kids? Would you answer the same way as you did for yourself?
Yeah, I think that the third never rarely is even less of an option for young people than myself. I mean, I think I see everybody's needing to take breaks or feeling the need to take some breaks because we are indoors and so connected all the time. Thinking about boundaries I've been hearing a lot more about that, even with young people. But I think that from my children and from the families that we serve in our community, we're hearing a lot about both the first and the second.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and end the polling here. So thanks for those who've been able to answer that. And it looks like overwhelmingly it's positive. And yes, of course, we see negative things, but it seems as if for the most part, it's been a positive thing. Now, what's interesting about that, from my perspective, is that I think prior to this moment in time, I think there's still parents who are anxious about it, especially for those whose kids aren't on it yet. It was met with a lot of skepticism. Why are you wasting your time on that? You've got other things you can do. Go out and see your friends. Go do something away from the screen. But it seems as if people are finally starting to see not only that it's not all bad, but also that it can bridge people and provide things to people that maybe they don't get in other ways. I don't know if what you've seen in your experience, Christine, with the communities that you're serving. Do you feel that that's been the case?
Absolutely. I think that, really predominantly we have been seeing a lot of people just reporting having opportunities to connect, new opportunities to connect online that they hadn't experienced before. But in addition to that, I think there's a discovery that's happening, again, with social media being supercharged. Not the non-young people, adults and even seniors, like I said, I think are now seeing what young people have known all along, which is that there's authentic connection happening online. There's authentic connection happening on social media. And there always has to be a balance, obviously, and it doesn't fully replace in-person, contact. But that doesn't make it not authentic. But I think until you yourself see. I think a lot of parents and grandparents have seen how they are now connecting on FaceTime and on Zoom and on social media and following social media sites. So I think that I've seen exactly what you're saying. I've seen a bridging and the opportunity for young people to bring older people into their lives, whether it's what they're doing in terms of gaming or their social media interests. So I think that's been a phenomenon I've seen that's really positive. I think a big part of that number 2 question, I think, is more the content that we've got that's happening right now. There's so many heavy, challenging things happening in the world right now. And so the content that's flowing through social media, even through TikTok, which, dances and all that stuff, there's a lot mixed in with the lighthearted that requires a level of media literacy that not all kids have. And even if they do, just the sheer volume of it when you're not outside or doing other things, the sheer volume of that. What I'm hearing from parents and my own experience too is that can really have a negative impact on you if you don't have the opportunity or the kind of practice to create boundaries. And that's a new challenge for us, I think.
Well, that's a great point. And I think, a couple of things for those of you on who are listening and watching. I do want to acknowledge, first of all, that if you answered that your kids aren't really heavily using social media yet, I do want to acknowledge that there are some basic things you can do to make sure that those first steps are safe, that they're healthy. I'll show you in a minute a screenshot. We have some resources on our website on, tips for safe and healthy social media use. That word healthy actually really only started entering the language around kids and social media in more recent years. But it's everything that the tip sheet will talk to you about. Do a little bit of homework about what the kids are asking you for. May I please download TikTok, House Party, or Instagram or Snapchat? The kids are gravitating towards pretty much the same 4 or 5 apps. So not like you have to become expert on everything, but you can find basic information on almost any app that they're interested in. And obviously the basics of using privacy settings, the security settings, take a look at that tip sheet. But I think as we were speaking before we went live today, Christine, the question around, in the beginning, when your kids are starting off, you worry about those basics. How do I keep them safe? Stranger danger, overuse, bullying, and then and even things around self-image and how it makes you feel better or worse about yourself and so on. So in the beginning, I think the things you can do are pretty, I wouldn't say easy, but they're not as challenging or complex as I think the things you're faced with the communities you serve. So I do want to back up for a second. So I just want to make sure the audience knows that those resources are there. But I think it would be very, very helpful for you to explain to everybody about Spark Kindness and also talk about the acronym Spark. So tell us a little bit about the work that you do.
So Spark was actually formed as a parent group 10 years ago, actually 10 years ago this week. I was an at-home parent with 3 kids. I'm an attorney, but I was home with my children. And there was a cyberbullying incident. There was a bullying incident in my child's middle school. And my daughter at the time, my oldest, it was a time when Facebook was a big thing in middle school. Social media was very much a new thing. And my oldest, who was in middle school, didn't have a phone and she wasn't on social media. But it was impacting the whole school because it was the dawn of social media at that time, in middle schools. So the schools were really grappling with how to handle it, and they were getting blamed. I think everybody was, as with any challenging new situation, when we don't know how to handle it, we can blame each other. I mean, it's a human instinct. So I think parents were blaming schools were maybe blaming parents. And, we weren't directly affected by the particular cyberbullying incident, but it really it opened my eyes about how much I did not know, so that just because my daughter didn't have a phone yet didn't mean that I didn't need to educate myself, and just because I wasn't active on social media didn't mean that I shouldn't kind of understand what it was all about and educate myself. So it was a wake-up call. And I think it was a learning process for me, because what first became like, oh, this, oh my gosh, that what you, described, Lynette, that fear of something new. You hear all the horror stories, and particularly when you've come to the topic through an incident, right? But the more I learned, the more I really discovered that addressing bullying and cyberbullying was not just up to the parents or the schools. It was about, basic things like, how do we treat each other? The importance of the importance of every individual being treated with dignity and respect, that justice issue. And so the more I learned, the more I realized that this was about taking a community approach, all of us coming together and saying, what role can I play? And also educating ourselves, not being alarmist and not putting our heads in the sand, but educating ourselves about the positives and educating ourselves about the challenges. And really, we come from what we call a strengths-based and a community-based approach. So we start with our strengths. We start with what the strengths are of the community. So we have in our community the police, the schools, faith leaders, all different coaches, all different sectors of the community, saying it's all of our job to educate ourselves and to create a community where our mission at Spark, so that which began as a parent group, evolved into a nonprofit, and the title Spark Kindness, the name Spark Kindness, stands for Successful, Positive, Authentic, Resilient Kids. Because what we learned was that, in bullying, as within many negative behaviors, you need to first, of course, address the behavior and support the target. But at the same time, you have to empower the target and promote resilience. You can't just swoop in and fix it. You've got to address and build resilience. And so that's what we really focused on. And when we did that work of building a kinder, more connected community, opening channels of communication, being proactive instead of reactive, what we found was this model addresses all sorts of negative behaviors beyond cyberbullying, beyond bullying, issues like racism and issues where there's lots of stigma and shame and people don't talk, like substance use disorder and mental health. So it became a community-wide approach. And really we began with just asking ourselves, what do we need to learn? And then saying we can all approach this together. Because I really do believe what you said, and I've had the privilege of working with Lynette, and she's been one of our rock star community partners. I think people get very scared, and so, and again, that tendency to be reactive or dig our heads in the sand. But, there's the social media is so complex. There's such uses for good. And when things come up, as they do, if we all can put our heads together to problem solve, the thing that I worry about the most, honestly, is when people have no one to talk to. If something comes up online or in person, if somebody feels so alone that they don't have anybody to talk to deal with it, whether it's a child or an adult, that's what we're trying to prevent. We can't prevent all issues from coming up because we're human beings and things come up, but we can find ways that if things come up, it's not a culture that accepts disrespectful behavior. And also we have people to reach out to, so no one feels alone.
Well, that's great. And you do great work, really, honestly. I think the range of issues that you've been able to serve your communities, you named some of them there, but you've had people who become widows or widowers, or children who lose a parent, people with special education needs and so on. I think it's really grown to be that kind of organization and therefore impactful. On the other side, as you say, and for those of you who might be listening, that oftentimes if there's something amiss in either your community or school environment, you just cannot go it alone. You've got to involve a lot of other people. If it's for your kids, it certainly includes the school district, but it also includes all of the other parents, all of the other places that all of these kids are interacting with or engaging with. So that community approach, I think, is the second piece of it's very really powerful about your approach. So thank you. I think a lot of people can learn from this model. And my understanding is you have tried to replicate what you're doing in other communities and other states, even, correct? Is that right? What other places?
In other towns in Massachusetts so far, yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so it's a grassroots approach, so every town is going to be different, but we have core values that we teach about and we support around and we consult around.
Okay, fantastic. And specific to social media, I think wondering, and I've asked many of our other guests about this before, but it really has to be asked, and that is, in February, what was it like? And now that we're in June, and everything that happened March, April, May, and now, what's different? What's changed? And specifically, how is that playing out on social media? Because I think a lot of what you're facing, especially with youth, tends to play out. Social media has a role often in a lot of what's going on. So what's different?
I think that we talked about before about that kind of supercharged element of it and the bridging and becoming more aware of how people can make authentic connections online, how youth are. I've also seen, again, we had a program called Don't Worry Alone, where we had parents. It was a live program, and we have one of our wonderful advisory board members is a psychiatrist, and his idea was just, let's be online and talk to each other about what's working. And you can hear that, and this is also based on a lot of the feedback we've had from other programs. Young people on social media and online have really been using this time, of course, when they are on technology even more, and we all are, they're developing hobbies. They are cooking. They are developing, building gardens. I think that and again, that's been an opportunity for parents to connect in with their kids on what are your interests online. What are the things that you can learn? I mean, it is definitely a place where young people can learn information to develop their interests. I also think it's been a huge outlet for social justice, for anti-racist work being done by young people, being connected, whether they have a protest in their town, being connected to those protests, being connected to information. It's been a huge source of information for them on all of the various, beginning with COVID, and all of the kind of the impacts, the justice issues impacts then, and now up till today with all of the anti-racist work and protests as well. So it's been a way both for them to become informed, and through them, and also, again, young people and adults to become informed, but also to become active, both in a social distancing way, where sometimes they're being active from home, which has always been the case. And I think young people have been more active online than maybe the people in their family realize. But I think that's becoming much more evident. The opportunities have increased because they're all focused on online right now, right? Nobody's having meetings where they're having everybody. I mean, aside from the protests, nobody's having an auditorium conversation about things. And young people aren't at their schools, so they're in their homes online, engaging in all of this work. So I think that that's been a huge change that I've seen in terms of just the amount of it. But then I think at the same time they've got all of that stuff, which is their interest that they're doing. But then they have all this. Young people have to be in school online, and that's not always fun. So I think they've got things that they're required to do, and then they've got all the things that they
love to do. Yes. Well, it might explain the run on yeast and all the baking that's been going on these past few months. I didn't have that problem because I didn't choose to be that kind of baker, but I did cook a lot more. And my daughter, both my kids were doing that with me, which I thought there was no other time ever we would have done that. I don't think that opportunity would have presented itself. So yes, searching for recipes. Oftentimes there are people on social media you can follow to get those ideas. I think it's great of outlet. And then ways to organize. So yes, my daughter was involved in a protest and she found everything she needed to know about it because of social media. There would have been no other way for these kids to connect and organize other than that. So I think I'm hoping that what comes out of this, I hope we get out of this lockdown and everything, but is that people finally see that there are good things about social media, not just the bad. You know, having said that, I think there's still a lot of work to be done. I mean, social media platforms have long been criticized for either their reluctance or their failure at making their environments a place that's safe, welcoming, you know, just positive for all of its users, but especially among young people. And it seems like they continue to stumble. Some are doing better than others. I will not pass judgment here. I have my opinions about which ones are doing better than others in social media. But take an example like this. You know, Instagram has not rolled this out worldwide, but they realized in a test case that, and there's been research to back this up. So the argument goes like this. The more I use social media, the more depressed I get. That's an overly simplified view of social media. But what the research actually discovered was it's not that simple, it's more nuanced. And the difference was two. Number one, if I engage in social comparison, if I'm constantly thinking that person is prettier than me, that person is having a better vacation than me, they have a nicer house, they have nicer clothes, you know, they have more friends than I do. If they engage in social comparison, that is what was leading partly to feeling bad about yourself, right? But the second was a different study out of Carnegie Mellon, and that was the more I'm engaged with direct interaction, I think it is, direct interaction versus passive consumption, I tended to be less feeling down about it. Okay, so that means direct interaction would be I'm posting, I'm commenting on other people's stuff, other people are commenting on mine, I'm liking, right? Passive consumption is just the endless scrolling. Endless scrolling. And so, you know, what's interesting to me is that one piece of advice I think would be good for parents right away is, you know, if you're going to say yes to social media and you want to make sure it's the healthiest possible thing, beyond putting the passwords and all of that security stuff, you know, and beyond saying, please don't post anything that you'll regret later, think about how you're going to use it and with whom you're going to use it. And if you limit your connections to people that you can have good interactions with, then that is going to lead to a safer and healthier experience on social media. Now, so fine. Another thing that Instagram could do is take away the likes. So that's what they were piloting, right? I can still see how many people like my photo, but now they're going to remove it so not the whole world cannot see how many likes I got, and I cannot see how much someone else got. And therefore, social comparison disappears. That's nice. That's a good step. But technology can't solve how human beings behave towards each other either. And so I'm wondering from your experience and perspective, what is the right balance between, hey, you know, Twitter and Facebook, you need to clean it up, make it better, make it better, make it better, versus maybe we should all just be nicer to each other and they wouldn't have to do anything. I mean, what's the balance from your perspective?
Yeah. I think I am that research that you cited is something that we've talked about as well at Spark, and I find really consistent, and we've utilized that in our own work and how we are ourselves. Spark as an organization is online. This idea that the impact of social media on our mood isn't just about do we not post nasty things or exactly even what we follow, but it's a tool. How are we engaging with this powerful tool? How do we see this powerful tool in our lives? And I do think that, they're definitely, one of the things I didn't mention that I think has been a huge role of social media for everybody is an escape. There's been a lot of, challenging news and heavy things to talk about. And a lot of what comes through that scroll is light and is, fantasy, and sometimes we need that, right? And kids need that. Kids don't need heavy stuff all the time. However, that FOMO idea, that if I'm scrolling and I'm constantly feeling on the outside looking in, that really has an impact. And one thing that we've seen at Spark, we try to take, we have come from this perspective of being growth mindset, of being optimistic, and positive. And what we have found is that when you positively contribute, it's not just to be a good person, which of course that's a good thing, but it's really when you positively contribute online, when you post that thing in the morning that, tries to cheer people up, when you post that news article that's going to uplift people, it uplifts you, what you post comes back to you. And if you're using social media as a tool to connect, which it is, then you've got to connect to people. As you said, Lynette, it's not just letting things scroll, because we can feel on the outside. So much on social media is very curated. It's a very curated, look at our own lives. It's quite easy, and we do internationally have an epidemic of loneliness. And that's one thing that Spark, that we're thinking about a lot, that before social isolation, before that, people have been reporting feeling more and more lonely. Do they have somebody that they can authentically talk to? There are authentic ways to engage online, and there are inauthentic ways to engage online. There are authentic ways to engage in person, and there are inauthentic ways to engage in person. So I think a lot of it is, how are we authentically connecting? Because when we authentically connect, it means we're showing our true self, and we are feeling like we're being seen. But if we're pretending to be somebody else or not even posting, then we're going to feel invisible, and it's not going to make us feel good. But I do think we have at Spark, we started right at the beginning of COVID, we started a positive news, a Spark Kindness and Positive News Facebook group, which, that I'm in charge of that. And I have to say, it boosts my mood. Part of my day is getting up in the morning and finding some positive news stories, and makes me feel good to put it on there. But then when I see people's reaction, like, wow, I needed this, because one thing that we've learned about kindness over the past 10 years is that, things that you think are really small can be everything to somebody when it's at a moment that they need it. And right now, the world is in a challenging moment. And so when you spread a bit of positivity, that can really lift somebody's day. And then when that comes back to you, you get a boost. And that can absolutely happen on social media. And we also have a caregivers group where we just post just that, what you were saying, that the idea that you're not alone, social media really can authentically give people the understanding that we're not alone, because this is a tough moment. It's a tough moment for parents working at home with kids in school with them. It's impossible in so many ways. And if we can be authentic and vulnerable about that, I think it can really be an opportunity to support one another. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that's a commitment I think we could all make today. Did you compliment somebody today? And you could do it over social media, over email. Like, if we all of us, did that for one person every day, do it for two people every day. Just make a commitment and do it every day. It takes you probably far less effort than turning on your laptop. So checking email and checking all those scrolls. So I'm going to commit to that, though. I could definitely do a better job of that every day. Now, I've got one more question, and I would encourage the audience to go ahead and post in the Q&A any questions you might have, and we'll turn to those in a minute. And this is one that I think might lead to other questions. I think it's really hard right now. So I think one of the things about social media that's beautiful is that you can express yourself. And then one of the things that's great about America is that we have our First Amendment. We can freely express ourselves. But when it comes to certain things going on right now in this country, I think there's two things going on. One is around, I'll give you an example. So driving around town here, and I see clearly, I mean, there are people who are more cautious about COVID-19, and they're walking with masks. And you see other people who are not wearing the masks, but also they're gathering in very closely in large groups. But a lot of times my kids are finding out about it because their peers have posted themselves at parties and gatherings now on social media. And man, that just feels like two different worlds that people are living in, right? So is this creating more isolation? Because do you feel like you're in the minority when everybody else, it seems like everybody else has said, nah, you'll be fine, just go out there. I think the other area is around what's happening around the protests, and that, some people are either paralyzed by what they're seeing, they're getting anxious and sad and angry about it, or others are really trying to be activists, as you were explaining before. But it's like you're putting yourself out there. If you're standing up against racism, that's your choice, and you do that. But then you also know there could be a backlash to that. If I put myself out there, will the internet in all its glory come back at me or be supportive of me? You kind of don't know. So, how do we help families through this time right now? I think it's really challenging to see such many different sides of two really important issues we're going through right now. How would you recommend that families could help their kids through this time when they're seeing that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things with the difficult, we're in a really difficult moment right now with layers of difficult challenges. And I think sometimes it's easy to forget that, even in the midst of a very different life that we're in right now, we just keep going and, go about our day and do things. And it's easy to forget for ourselves and for our kids just how much change there's been, how much uncertainty there is. One thing we've learned at Spark over the past 10 years, when we're dealing with really difficult things, one of our core values is generosity of spirit. And I think it's actually, it's one that I come back to over and over again, because when we're living together as fellow imperfect human beings in challenging times, we want to give people the benefit of the doubt. And we also want to, the flip side of generosity of spirit is self-compassion. We also have to be kind to ourselves. We've got to give ourselves a break. I think that often, because we have all these things going on, we're often in problem fixing mode. Let's do this, and we'll do, and we don't take a deep breath and say, oh my gosh, this is really hard. I think, one thing we've been saying at Spark, and I've been saying personally, is we're confronted every day with so many difficult decisions right now. Used to be that everything was easy. We go to the store, we do this, we do that, we go to work. Now there's all these weighing of benefits and costs. And so there's lots of impossible, very difficult decisions that people are faced with. And I think just beginning with that, giving ourselves the space, giving each other the space to say, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to give myself a break. I think that really helps. And I think that focusing on what we can control is a really great thing to talk to our kids about. And I think that again, it's really easy to be swept up in, looking at other people and seeing whether they're wearing masks or not, or judging their behavior. And it's easy to get caught up online. But I think we have to focus on what is in our control to do. And again, to the empathy piece, not only are we in a difficult moment in terms of the challenges we're being faced with, but online, I mean, it's always been the case. Like it's not easy to communicate difficult things online. That particularly when we're not having a lot of in-person, connection, and so online back and forths can be a lot more charged right now because there's no opportunity to connect in person because we're all stressed in so many ways. So again, giving people the benefit of the doubt, maybe they're not their best self right now. Maybe they're going through something right now, even beyond what I even know is happening. So, but in terms of focusing on what we can control, some things that we're talking about at Spark, again, that boost our own resilience and our own mental and physical health is focusing on the good. First of all, what can you do to do good? In addition to, posting things online, but what are things that you can do to help other people? There's lots of research that shows if you do that during challenging times, it supports your resilience going forward. Noticing the good, seeing the good around you. So not just doing things, but like instead of focusing on the people that aren't wearing masks and that they will be out there, noticing the people who are serving your community, noticing the neighbor who did something extra. Because for all the people that you see that aren't quite, doing what maybe they should be doing, there's so many. And I think our communities across the world have been so good as I've seen, because I've been, posting a lot of, just noticing each other, noticing the heroes, but also the people who are, doing small acts of kindness. And then the third thing we talk about is being able to receive good. And I think, frankly, that's the hardest thing for most of us. In this moment, we all are challenged and limited in so many ways. And often we have to accept help from people, whether it's young people who are having mental health challenges or older people, or people who are immune compromised and can't go out. I think that ability to accept help from one another is really strengthening. We see it as a vulnerability, but I think that if we can encourage each other to do that, it's really helpful. So being the good, and often I think a lot of the ways our young people are being the good right now is standing up, against racism, or standing up for anti-racism, protesting, etc., or in helping people who are vulnerable because of COVID. But there's plenty of good to see out there. And I'm not minimizing we have to address when people behave, when people are doing things that are putting other people at risk, of course we have to address them. But if they are small things that are annoying to us because people aren't following the rules, it's easy to get caught up in that because we're so under stress. But I think what's maybe better for us is to try to notice all the people who are going beyond just following the rules, who are putting themselves at risk to help us all. So
absolutely. Yeah, well, that's great. And I think, it's a tough time right now. And I think we're going to have to revisit this again when, maybe a year from now, when who knows what other challenges belie us. I think one thing we know that won't change is that social media is forever part of our lives. It's intertwined in our societies. And we do have some choices we can make about, as you say, how we look at it, but also how we treat ourselves and how we treat other people. We can't control what they do. We can control what we do. And I think to those parents out there, with regard to social media, yes, it's important for you to do the basics of teaching your kids to be safe and all of that. But I think there are many more complex issues, a lot of which we discussed today with Christine, that become actually the bigger challenges of introducing your children to social media, and even for us as adults. And so I just want to turn, I know there was, if there are any other questions, if people want to put that into the Q&A, please do that now. I know there was a question here. This might be a tough one. And it says, it feels like there's a great deal of polarization on social media these days where political views are being positioned as one side is right and the other is stupid or vice versa. And it seems very, very, very polarizing. And so do we see this trend getting worse? And I suppose another way to ask that question is, do we see this trend getting better? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think that it's a great question. Spark, our organization, one of our core values, I said one of them was generosity of spirit. Another is empowered impartiality. We're non-political, and often people think, can you stand up for things can you take a stand without taking sides, right? Don't you have to be political in order to stand up for issues of justice? And you really don't. I mean, I think that there is an opportunity for people to come together around values of dignity and respect that affect all people. And I think that social media does have the ability to do that. It has been a challenge. I think that we have been seeing, along with that trend of people being more lonely, the loneliness epidemic, we are seeing that polarization, and I think they're connected, frankly. I think that if we had a more direct, communication with people that didn't agree with us on everything and got to know them as human beings, complex human beings, I think that empathy builds, and I mean, literature is very important for that. And there's a lot online that we can learn about people's lives. I mean, I think people are reading a lot of stories about people's complex lives. And so that's a way, even without engaging with a live person, you can learn about the complexities of human beings. But the challenge is, are we engaging in very just, reactive, quick engagements with people, or are we going deeper? And I think there is an opportunity. There's an opportunity to go. I think social media is a platform where there's a lot of opportunity for it. And yeah.
Well, I agree. And I think that I've often argued that the internet actually needs more friction. We need to introduce friction before we're allowed to post something, before we're allowed to respond to something, before we're allowed to believe something, click on something, share it. That's the one thing I think I'd like to see happen. And I'm often reminded of the days with Microsoft Word. You were not actually given the option once you closed Microsoft Word. It did not prompt you with a question. And that question is, do you want to save your work before you close this? There was a time where you closed it and you had all kinds of regrets, like, oh my gosh, I just wrote 18 paragraphs and it didn't save. And that little move, I think, that was great. So I would like to see those little bubbles pop up again every time anyone's posting things. I think we need to introduce more friction.
Yeah, I think it's a muscle. A lot of what we do at Spark, you'd think with the title Spark Kindness that we would, not be engaged in dealing with conflict. But what we found in these bullying obviously involves conflict. A lot of these issues where there's stigma and shame, people are not having conversations. And just like with that, it's a muscle. Difficult conversations are a muscle. Not being safe in our silos of beliefs and understanding. It's a muscle that once you practice it, it gets more comfortable. It's not personal. You can have disagreements with people. It's not personal. It's about ideas. You learn things. But if you don't practice and you don't develop that muscle, it does feel overwhelming, and it feels a lot safer to stay in our own, kind of our silo. And and I think that becomes and develops into being much more where we're just not connecting at the level that's possible. Like you said, I think when people hear friction, certainly when they hear conflict, they get scared. But but there's growth from conflict. You know, you reflect on what your values are, you learn things, you know, so I do think that hopefully, I think there's an opportunity. I do see pockets where I'm seeing that. I'm seeing calls for that, calls for you know, kind of that bridge, and having conversations. But I think people need the tools to do it. That's because if you go into, you know, it could, you know, be difficult.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. And that's where I think the industry is still learning how to really model what humanity needs from them. And I want to clarify, when I say more friction, I don't mean friction as in conflict. I mean friction and as slow us down, slow you down before you decide to do something with. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, I was. We use this. We've used this term. Well, kind of the idea of friction and being growth in terms of that.
Okay.
What was one of our speakers talked about it. It was like collaborative friction, but I hear what you're saying. The having to think first before you post something.
Yes.
That kind of thing.
Or believe it, right?
Making you have a second moment where before you President Lincoln, I always quote that he would write a letter and he would put it away when it was the most charged thing that he, you know, a charged issue. He'd write a letter and he'd put it away for a day or a week, and then he'd say, did I need to send it? And I think it's good advice for all of us. And I think it is a challenge right now when we're online all the time, that when we're emotional and we're more charged up. So is it more likely, and I haven't seen research on this, but is it more likely that we're sending that, you know, we're posting that thing, as opposed to waiting till tomorrow morning? I don't know. I mean, I can see why it would be more likely that we would, but you know, I don't know.
Yes, absolutely. And so I just thank you so much, Christine. This has been an awesome conversation, and I think we have a comment from a viewer that said, thank you for reminding us we need to spread kindness. You know, something so simple, And let's all make that commitment today to say one or two kind things to someone. Just send one or two kind things to another person every single day. We'll see if we can change the world. So a couple things before we close out, and that is I mentioned earlier, if you go and visit us on internetsafety.trendmicro.com, you will see the tip sheet I was talking about around, you know, some of the basics on safe and healthy social media use. But I hope you will supplement those tips with maybe re-listening to this conversation that we've had with Christine today, because really together, I think that is what you need to help your children use it in safe and positive ways. I also invite you to go ahead and listen to all of our past sessions. This is just a small sampling, but again, at the same website, you will see all of the other topics we've talked about in the past, the recordings to those sessions, and other guests that we've had, in addition to resources, tip sheets, and other resources. Finally, as I said in the beginning of the call, this is our last of the webinars for this first series, but I'm excited to announce that we will continue again with our second chapter this August. So please come back. You'll be seeing more. Keep checking the site to see the schedule for those. We have Microsoft coming up. We have Twitter coming up. And if all goes well, we may have also TikTok. And some of our guests in the past may be returning. I also mentioned earlier on, if you're interested in having a session like this, but just for your private community, please contact us at internetsafety.trendmicro.com/contact us. And when you conclude today's call, you'll be prompted right to our survey page. And if you do enter your email address in addition to the feedback, you will have a chance to win a subscription to Trend Micro Maximum Security to secure up to 5 devices in your home. So with that, thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you so much, Christine, for being our guest. This was a great conversation. I think it's certainly been catharsis for me. And I hope we can have you back again in the future.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.